the subject matter of this podcast, which is the whole concept of stigmatized properties. We deal with this issue on a regular basis. In the U.S., they itemize 6 different stigmas. The most common one, of course, is murder and suicide. Public intrigue stigma, paranormal activity, criminal stigma, the debt stigma, lastly, the minimal stigma.
The agent community would be interested in hearing this.
In this case, a serial murderer lived in this house. Doug, I think we're on the air.
Yes,
So
let's do this.
welcome, everybody. Incidentally, over there is your camera.
Yes, I got that. It used to be just an iPhone, so I'm happy that it's been upgraded to a proper camera.
Thanks,
Lenny.
upgraded. That's your camera. Okay, going for it. I'm Chris Kapchis, CEO of Chestnut Park.
That's your
Real
camera.
Estate.
Keep looking.
And that's my camera over here. And across the table from me
is Doug Gubitz. I'm the president of Chestnut Park, and we're delighted to be hosting our 8th podcast.
Eighth podcast?
I think so. I'm pretty sure we're at number 8. I mean, yeah, we said number 8.
And of course, we're not only decanting real estate, but we're also decanting wine.
In keeping with the tradition.
And this wine that I might add is from Doug's wine cellar. At least early indication, just the nose coming off the decanter is absolutely incredible. Doug, please tell us a little bit about this.
First, I'm going to tell you how I selected the wine. I have a very difficult audience in Mr. Kapchis here. He doesn't like wines that are tannic. And he doesn't
as long as the tannins have softened.
Okay, well, that's what I just said, is you don't like tannic wines.
Correct.
Okay. And you don't like old wines generally because you think the fruit has subsided.
Diminished.
Yeah. So, European wines, it's hard to find that sweet spot. You don't like it old and you don't like it tannic. So what do? So that's tricky. And I don't have all the resources to find that little, rabbit hole through your wine interest. So I chose this today. It's a Margaux. It's Chateau Giscourt. How did I do with that? C'est bon? Okay.
Yeah, incidentally, our producer is
from Lyon.
From Lyon.
With a beautiful accent.
With a beautiful accent, yes.
Anyhow, so I selected Chateau Giscourt from Margaux, a left bank wine. 2016, young indeed, at under 10 years old. We had a 16 once before. It was La Dame de Montrose, which she thought was great. This won't be as ready, but it'll still be on its fruit, although we had a fantastic experience with it. An 05 we did a couple weeks ago. We hated it right out of the bottle. It was dreadful. 2.5 hours later.
It was amazing.
That was something. It was also from Margaux. It was the Brain Cantonac. We should have put that up here. Anyhow, so we're going to try this. It might be a little bit tannic for you, but I suspect it's...
Before we get in decanting real estate,
very rich. Just
do a little pour. We'll do a little taste, and then we'll see how it unfolds.
Yes, sir.
But as I said, the nose, I found it, as I said, cassis. I had rose petals.
But it's violets.
But it's violets. There's chocolate in there. There's...
Brian, can I trouble you to grab that?
Yeah. Okay, first taste. Can you see the bottle? Is that there? Cork was perfect. Take a look at that. Cork, not corked. Oh boy, that smells good, but it does smell young.
It does smell young.
There's a lot of black currant.
Yeah, the black currant is definitely there.
Very
more so than just nosing it off the decanter.
So I find that when the black currant is as prominent, is that
it's almost jammy.
Well, I don't know, maybe.
No, in the nose, just in the nose.
No, it's very full bodied in the nose. That's an expression. When it's that much black currant, it tends to me to be a younger wine. Guess what the alcohol content is, which is very appealing to me. Yes.
13. I read the label.
Oh, did you? Did you?
I read the label.
Oh, because that would have been an unbelievable guess.
I read the label.
Okay. Well, 13.
But I would have gotten it.
No, you would have.
Yes, I would have.
You would have said 14 or 15 or something like that.
Oh my God, it's amazing. A lot of fruit.
A lot more fruit than we had other.
A lot of fruit. You almost think this was a New World wine.
It's because it's young.
Yeah.
We read the reviews. I think this is going to go on for a very, very
Yeah.
long time.
It's got a
But there's this kind of cloyingness
Yeah.
to it, which I'm not loving.
No, either am I. It's like a lack of maturity.
Maybe we'll have the same experience as we did a couple weeks ago,
Let's
and we'll
find
see.
out. Let's find out. Uh, for those of you that watched our last podcast, you probably remember Doug putting out a little teaser near the end of it, talking about the subject matter of this podcast, which is the whole concept of stigmatized properties. And one of the reasons why both Doug and I felt that this was a wonderful subject for a podcast is that aside from its kind of, I think there's an intellectual component to this.
Yes, I
Uh,
totally agree.
but
It's quite stimulating,
from a practical standpoint, we deal with this issue on a regular basis
and it's tricky.
in the office on transactions that come up on a literally almost, I would say, monthly basis. We have to deal with one of these issues. Uh, in sort of preparation for this, we did a little research to look at other jurisdictions as well, and I've not to bore people, but we looked at all of the American jurisdictions, uh, and it's interesting because they vary. Although for the most part they're consistent in that there's no obligation to disclose um, stigmas.
When you say what a stigma is,
Why don't I do that? I'll read
go there.
right from this. They in the U.S. they itemize 6 different stigmas. The most common one, of course, is murder and suicide. And I
We're
think
talking about, do you have to disclose a murder or suicide that took place in the house that you're listing for sale?
correct,
That's really what the agenda is
correct.
for today.
And then like, where it starts getting murky is how far back do you have to go?
Yep.
Okay, just keep that in mind. They also have this public intrigue stigma in the U.S., which is not language that we use here in Ontario.
So what does it mean?
Well, it basically talks about a property that has acquired notoriety, and one of the examples that they give is the Breaking Bad series that appeared on, I believe, Netflix or one of those, where the property became it's sort of ingrained in the viewer's mind, and now people keep going to see this property that
Right.
was the centerpiece of the
It's like tourist destination. They go out
exactly.
to see it because they want to be there.
The other one that's quite normal is paranormal activity,
Ghosts.
ghosts primarily.
That's a big one, by the way.
You know, and we don't have time, but I had actually a paranormal experience in Collingwood, of all places.
I know all about that.
I think I told you
Yeah.
about it, but we don't have time for that. But maybe another
It's a good one.
we'll cover it. The criminal stigma. Property's been used in a
Well,
criminal
criminal activity,
fashion,
yeah.
criminal activity in the past. Sometimes this goes beyond stigma, as you and I have discussed. It goes to the point of actually affecting the property, i.e., the easiest example to bring forward is a grow up, where it impacts the property itself.
But it's not a psychological
Yeah.
thing.
There's one here called a debt stigma, and it's interesting because we might cover a case, an Ontario case, involving a well-known personality that involved a debt stigma.
That's a teaser.
And lastly, they have one called the minimal stigma.
So we're talking about essentially things that might impact a buyer, but has nothing to do with the property. It's a
Correct.
psychological thing.
Psychological. These are all
Well,
psychological.
what are these things? Are we duty bound as realtors to be disclosing this to the buying community?
That's the
That's the
$1
thrust of
million
the-
question.
Right.
That's
And
the $1 million question.
It's if it was easy, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Correct. Just to finish this little intro, uh, as I said, in almost all of the states, they call them buyer beware states,
Yeah.
where there's no obligation on the part of the seller or on the part of realtors to disclose to potential buyers and their agents that a property has been impacted by stigma. Any one of the 6 stigmas that I just read.
That would make our lives very easy.
Correct. But there are 3 states that have some form of obligation to disclose. California, and you know that.
Yeah.
What's California?
Well, if there's been a death in the property of any kind, you have to disclose it for 3 years.
Correct.
Afterwards, you're exonerated from disclosure.
Correct.
And
And there's a couple more. There's, for example, the
North Dakota.
no. Let's just do New Jersey first.
Yeah.
New Jersey, they don't have legislation, but there was a case in New Jersey that went up to the New Jersey Supreme Court that found that a real estate agent would be required to disclose such a fact if it so was intertwined with the physical condition of the property that it must be disclosed. And the example that they give, if someone died in a property due to a toxic event within the property,
Toxic mold.
something of that nature.
That's a very,
Very,
very
yeah,
minor
an
exception.
extreme. I think an
Yeah.
extreme situation. Ohio has no law addressing stigmatized events which may have occurred on or near the property. However, it's recommended that sellers still disclose any such facts because the buyer could claim in court that it was a material fact. And this will lead us back to the
Quandary.
the Ontario
Yeah.
quandary. And then lastly is South Dakota.
That's a good one. I said North Dakota, but it's south.
The seller's disclosure statement in South Dakota requires that sellers disclose whether there is a homicide, a suicide, or a felony, a criminal event that took place in the property within the past 12 months.
And none of those affect the property.
None.
Affect the physical
No,
property.
strictly
Psychological.
Strictly stigma.
And stigma is a psychological impairment.
Yeah.
Potential.
We could mention Vermont as the last one. Again, there's no explicit language in the law in Vermont regarding stigmatized property. However, there's a requirement that agents disclose facts that an agent reasonably believes may directly impact the future use or value of the property. Again, that takes us to Ontario.
So where do we stand in this province with respect?
Well, what do you tell us?
Well, first of all, there's
How
no
you see Ontario?
there's no legislation
Could we just
provincially.
break for 1 second?
Of course. Oh, we'll try it.
Too
You know, it's just starting to be like that Bottle of Brain Canton Act 2005 we had 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It's just like that.
The jamminess, the
Yeah, it's
fruitiness is
settling down a little
settling
bit.
down,
Maybe in 2 hours this is going to be great.
and getting some tannins now.
Uh-oh. Well, listen, I give up. That's it. My Bordeaux cellar is closed for the purposes of this. Back to what was. So in Ontario, there is no legislation with respect to stigma. So a seller is not bound to any law that says they have to disclose any one of the stigmas that we've discussed, which would, on its face, would make this very simple.
Correct.
Why would we prejudice a seller by disclosing, for example, that someone hung themselves in the basement, which is
Sad.
and it's happened, and we've had to confront these exact circumstances. So sadly, someone hung themselves in my basement. I want to sell my house. The Ontario law does not require me to disclose that to anybody. Great. But that's not the case with respect, might not entirely be the case with respect to realtors' obligations under the prevailing legislation that governs the conduct of real estate agents. It's called the Trust and Real Estate Services Act, where they have the act does not specifically address stigma, but it addresses material facts.
Oh, that wily material
That
fact.
material fact thing. And a material fact you would think would be just a material fact about the property.
Correct.
Like a latent defect, asbestos, UV, knob and tube wiring,
Structural.
dampness in the basement, flooding, any one of these typical latent defects that we are duty bound to disclose. That would be easy if it was just about the property, but they define material facts so broadly that I think our industry believes that it encompasses many of these stigmas, meaning they have to be disclosed, even though they're psychological matters and not physical matters as it relates to the property that we've been retained to sell. And that goes to the definition, which I think we've got to read right now. So under the legislation that guides us as agents and brokers, we have to disclose material facts defined as this. Material fact means with respect to the acquisition or disposition of an interest in real estate, so the buying or the selling of real estate, a fact that would affect a reasonable person's decision to acquire or dispose of that interest in real estate.
But
Would affect a reasonable person's decision.
we're into the ether now, because you have to define reasonable,
Yeah. Reasonable person.
reasonable person,
Yeah.
and
Whether it would affect their decision.
correct.
Right.
You may or may not be aware of this, but there's a case in British Columbia where a uh, a buyer buys a property that fronts onto an ocean lot.
I know this case. We've
Yeah,
discussed
an
this.
ocean
This
lot.
is a good one.
And he buys and closes the deal in the winter.
Yeah.
He takes possession of the property. By the time he takes possession of the property, the weather has improved. And the next thing he knows is there's a nude beach that his property fronts onto.
Between his property and the water.
Correct.
Yeah.
He says, hey, I never would have bought this property had I known there was a nude beach here.
I think it was actually a nudist colony, wasn't
Or
it?
maybe a nudist colony. But nude
Everybody's
people
there. They're all nude
walk
on the
across his
or
property.
they're
He
sunning
says, this is
themselves.
offensive to me. I would never have bought this
Right.
property.
Yeah. What happened?
He lost at court because the court said some people might even see this as an advantage.
Had they disclosed it, he might have got more money for the property. Who knows? Now he's mad at his
There's
agent
the-
for not having
Yeah,
disclosed it.
there's the reasonable part of it. Like,
Well, reasonably.
he thought he was a reasonable person, but the court didn't.
Yeah, but there's a threat. There's a standard of a reasonable person in law.
Yeah, makes me nervous.
Okay. So, but this is what's got us, right? So, yes, the province does not have legislation, sorry for the, with respect to disclosure of stigmatized property. But we have an obligation to disclose material facts, which is very broadly and loosely defined. And I think our industry has picked up on this. And most brokerages, I would think in Ontario, believe that most of the stigmas we're talking about, we are duty bound to disclose.
I am not sure about the psychological stigma, the paranormal stigma.
Ghosts?
Yeah.
Well, there are people now who you can hire to kind of cleanse your house of a ghost. We talked about this at one of our office meetings. One of our agents actually did it, and they sold their house in 2 days.
Bravo.
Yeah. So maybe not ghosts, but the other ones that we deal with more regularly. For example, I'll put you to the test, okay? I've put together a few questions since you know all. You're not prepared. Okay, well that's okay. You can do it. You live in a semi-detached house,
Right.
okay? And the attached neighbor to your house has some mental health challenges. One of which he stays up all night long, yelling and screaming at the top of his lungs, making it impossible for you to sleep. Good one, huh?
Well, first of all, you are making this very difficult for me because I do not believe the example that you just given falls into the category of stigma.
I made it up.
But I don't think it's a stigma.
Okay. Well,
But
then what is it?
It may be a material fact.
Why isn't it a stigma? It's nothing to do with the real property.
It has nothing to do with the real property, but those 6 categories, where would you fit that into those 6 categories? Maybe the category that spoke about the value and the use of the property
There you go.
might fall into that.
But that was only one state that used that as an
Correct.
exception.
But
That's very narrow.
This puts everyone in a very difficult situation.
Well, of course, that's what we're dealing
To
with.
answer that puts us in a difficult situation.
Of course it does.
Because you have the interests of the seller in the semi-detached.
Which is paramount.
Yes. And you as an agent are retained for the purposes of selling that property.
And you can't if I'm the seller and you're my agent, you can't compromise my value,
Correct.
the value of my property.
So for me as the agent to be disclosing, and how am I going to disclose it? Am I going to disclose it in the agreement? Am I going to disclose it in a schedule to the listing?
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far, but it might be required a written disclosure in the agreement of purchase and sale. If you're going to disclose, that's the format.
And at
That's the
what point
form.
in time do I disclose it?
That's mechanics. Let's talk about whether it has to be disclosed at all. And if I'm the seller in that position, I'm in a very tricky position as well.
For sure.
I might not even want to tell you for fear that I'm giving you information that you might then feel duty bound to disclose.
So the seller might not know that, but uh,
The seller might have had legal advice on this too, by the way, because in fact, RICO suggests when these situations get a little tricky, for you to recommend to your
I can
clients.
tell you if you went and got legal advice on this, what the legal advice
They
would
say
be.
do not disclose.
Do not disclose.
There's no legislation,
Yeah.
but we had
In the common law doesn't catch that either.
right, but we have professional duties as agents to disclose these things, which puts us in a bit of a conflict situation. And these things come up, and this is a particularly difficult one. I mean,
But you might look at it from the perspective that maybe the neighbor that's disruptive is disruptive because they don't like the guy that's about to sell his house.
well, that would hopefully be the
And
situation.
hopefully, right, that is the situation. You can explain it away and therefore don't have to disclose it. But I think my conscience would trouble me, Doug.
I said, well, yeah, me too.
My conscience would trouble me in those circumstances, particularly if it was a really egregious form of behavior on the part of the next door neighbor.
Right. What if that person gets to the point where he's not just yelling and screaming, he's actually physically banging on the wall?
I think it's time to call the police.
I would imagine in these circumstances the police have been to these situations, but they're loath to remove people from their properties. So that could get very, very tricky, and no agent wants to be involved in this kind of situation. And that's why we decided to talk about stigma, because,
You've picked a very hard one.
well,
I was hoping you'd be dealing with the psychological ones or the nude beaches.
okay, I'll give you one more.
Okay.
You have a big, deep backyard. And at the back of the lot, there's a very high, beautiful stone wall, but it's really high. Behind it is a cemetery and a crematorium, or maybe even a rail line, but you can't see it. So, acting reasonably as the buyer, you cannot see either the cemetery, the potentially crematorium, or rail line.
The answer for me is easy.
Yep.
Disclose. I'll tell you why.
Okay, please.
Because in that instance, I believe that stigma, if you want to call it that, or that material fact, is such that it is an extension of the
Oh, we talked about this.
it's an extension of the property. So you're actually disclosing something about the property as opposed to a psychological amorphous concept.
So it's a material fact,
I believe that to be a material,
not a stigma.
not a stigma.
Okay, so that's great. So now we've kind of differentiated a bit between the confusion of stigma versus material fact and the blurry lines between them. Let's go back, for example, to a murder in your house. Someone breaks into a house and murders somebody,
Mhm.
or there was a murder on the property, backyard, gunplay, whatever. I'm the seller now. This happened to me, third party. Um, I want to sell my house. That's definitely a stigma.
That's a stigma, and I don't believe that should be disclosed.
And what's your reasoning for that?
It doesn't affect the property, doesn't affect the use of the property, and disclosing it could affect the value of it.
Oh, I think it's pretty clear that it would.
So no obligation to disclose that. And is it reasonably a material fact? I don't know that it is. Some people might be troubled by it, others may not. The moment you have any distinction in that regard, I think it falls out of the concept of material fact and does not need to be disclosed.
And it was a one-time event.
At one time, exactly.
What about the same kind of criminal activity? And I think the agent community will be interested in hearing this. What about the Shea Gilgis Alexander case in Burlington, I believe? Um, where forget that case for a moment. What about a criminal event or a series of criminal events ongoing? Um, um, For example, the one I kind of thought about would be a biker gang. Recently used the house, very recently, for drug dealing and the production of pornographic movies. Now, there obviously have been, let's say, evicted, right? Let's just assume for argument's sake, this house was taken over by a bank under power of sale. And the agent knows full well
They owned it or were tenants?
they owned it,
Okay.
which distinguishes it from the Gilgis Alexander case, which we might get to. But I know now, the lender told me, or I knew about it because I had seen what had been going on in the property, just driving by, knowing that one day I might just live in the community and I know. So now we have a situation where there was an active criminal conduct in the property immediately prior to the time that we're going to market with it. In theory, the consumers of the drugs that the biker gang was uh, dealing, or the people who were involved in the pornographic production of movies, might not know that the house was sold and might just come back knowing that that's the house where they can get X or Y drugs or X or Y pornographic materials. Is that a disclosure matter? Is that a stigma? And is it a disclosure matter?
That is intriguing.
Uh-huh.
First of all, though, if we look at the American phenomena,
Yeah.
there's no state that would require you to disclose that.
That's very interesting to me. Go ahead.
So if you riffed on that,
Yeah.
then probably there's no obligation, in my opinion, technically to disclose that.
Right.
And I don't believe it's a material fact because it doesn't affect the property, given the definition that I gave.
What about if, you can argue by extension, as you like to talk about the extension of the property. What about the potential of people coming back to the property?
But you don't know that.
You don't, but,
You don't know that.
well, they didn't know that in the Alexander Gilgis case either. Yet the court ruled in favor of.
I think the
Mr.
court made a mistake.
You want to talk about that now?
Well, I think you should speak about the case first.
So the property in Burlington was tenanted, and the tenant was a crypto king
Mm-hmm.
whose name I had.
Starsky,
Something.
something,
Bertarsky, something like
something like that.
that.
He was a kid. He was like 24 years old.
Yeah, and he obviously owed some people some money who were not very happy
I
about
think
that.
I think he lost a lot of people's money.
Yeah.
Whether he defrauded them or not. And for a while, if you saw him on Instagram, he was driving Ferraris and his own jets were taking him
Yeah.
to various places throughout the world. He was
Living a high life.
but probably using other people's money.
Yeah, and they came to get it.
And they came to, and do you know how much money he was paying rent for that place?
I don't.
$45,000 a month.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Must have been a nice house, obviously. Because
Obviously.
Shea Gilgis Alexander.
I think he paid $8 million for it.
Okay. So people came to collect him a few times and kidnapped him, trying to shake him down, get paid back. At one point, they kidnapped him and then tossed him back on the front lawn afterwards.
Yeah.
Alive.
After beating him up.
It
was all in the press. This is
this is notorious.
Yeah.
So obviously he was evicted. At some point he left.
Correct.
Must have. And the current MVP of the NBA buys the property
from the owner.
From the owner, not the tenant.
Not from the tenant, from the owner.
Did someone come back to the property after they owned it? Or
Yes.
you just heard about it? They did.
Yeah.
So that's very similar to the case of
someone came and knocked on the door after
Shea Gilgis
Alexander. It's kind of a long name.
SGA, they call him.
SGA?
Yeah.
Okay. After SGA bought it, he wasn't home, but his wife was home. And she was quite frightened,
I bet,
by the people who came. They were demanding to get a hold of this Plaskarsky or whatever his name was.
Call him the crypto king.
The crypto king. He was, of course, long gone. Title had transferred to the SGA. I was going to use his
MVP title.
MVP handle. In any event,
not only the NBA, the MVP of the league, he was the MVP of the finals, and they won the NBA World.
And he's the only Canadian to ever achieve that honor.
Correct. He's from
Burlington.
Hamilton.
Oh, Hamilton. That area.
Yeah.
In any event, they came frightened his wife.
Sure.
I've said, there's no way I can continue to live here.
Right.
He went to his lawyers, said, look, my wife can't live there. We have to leave. We should have been told about this history associated with the
Yeah.
property and the fact that we may have some of these unsavory characters that are looking to get their money from the crypto king coming and irritating us. And where
Maybe threatening them
just
as
a
well.
moment, where they may have had a case, and I just remembered this, I think, very pertinent fact.
Okay.
Being who he is, a very prominent
Yeah.
individual, he made a point when he was negotiating the deal with the seller,
Oh, yes. Good point.
asking, is this going to be a secure private place?
Right.
And apparently, I've not seen the property other than in photograph, but the seller assured him that it was as private a place as someone of his notoriety, positive notoriety,
Yeah.
could ever ask for.
I think security came up into the
Yeah.
wording as well.
And that's where I think the case turned.
Good.
So a misrepresentation. And if we have a moment before we finish, I'd like to talk about an LA case that's turning on this as we
So I'm
speak.
glad you raised this now, because this case has been bothering us a lot, because they
It's
ruled,
bothering me a lot.
they ruled in favor of SGA, and they made the owner buy the house back from him.
Yeah. But that in itself is troublesome. Let's assume that there was a misrepresentation.
Okay.
They shouldn't reverse the sale,
Just damages.
just damages.
So this troubled you particularly. We raised this at an office meeting, and this turns the law on its head,
Correct.
both the common law and well, not necessarily the regulatory position, but definitely the common law, where there's no obligation, and whether that was even a stigma, because it wasn't even it was maybe stigmatizing the property because it was a tenant. An argument was it was the owner, not the tenant. It would be different if
The owner is also very well known.
Oh, I don't remember.
He's a developer. I think his name is Gupta or something like that.
Oh, the condo developer, Steve
Is-
Gupta.
I think that's who it is. We should be careful
Right.
for the purpose of the broadcast, but he's well known, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the case didn't get appealed. Maybe he just wanted to leave it.
Right.
so
And
that-
it was a superior court, so it wasn't a motions court assignment.
Correct.
This wasn't a summary matter. This was heard by a judge.
But you're making a very good point, and I hope our audience appreciates this. The difficulty that both a seller and a seller's agent are put in when there's anything associated with a property that has, quote unquote, the stigma component to it, and what is reasonable, what is a material fact, and when do you disclose, when do you not disclose? Not easy questions to answer, as even some of these cases speak to.
But I think you can see that the onus, really, both in the United States and in Canada, particularly in the United States, is shifted to the buyer, and by extension,
And that's
to
where
the
it
buyer's
should be.
agent.
That's where it should
Right.
be.
So let's talk about this for a second. So I don't want you're my client. I'm your agent. I don't want you tripping over some nasty situation that you didn't know about in advance prior to you purchasing the property. And you have a duty, and I have a duty.
Correct.
You have a duty to tell me about your sensitivities. You might be sensitive to having had a death in the property. You might be sensitive to a certain kind of death. Maybe not a natural death, but maybe a
we
suicide.
know some cultural groups are sensitive
Yes.
to aspects that other cultural groups,
Correct.
it doesn't even dawn on them that it would be problematic.
Right.
We know that certain cultural groups have sensitivities to numbers,
Right.
and they won't buy a house with a certain number.
Correct. And you might also be sensitive to a house that has a notorious past.
Correct.
The subject matter of the owner having had an investigation of some sort, criminal activity, not just death, but criminal activity.
And yet there's some people who will say, doesn't bother me.
Doesn't be in a row. But you have a duty as a buyer to tell me as your agent.
Correct.
But I definitely have a regulatory duty to inquire with you. So, Chris, let's talk about a few things that you might be sensitive to so that I can make the appropriate inquiries. Since it is a buyer beware environment under the law, I would like to know what you are sensitive to: death, criminal activity. Let's talk about all these things. And then I'll make my best efforts in each case to determine if any of those circumstances exist or existed in the property that you're considering buying. So it's a joint effort, but it is very skewed to the buyer side of the equation. I think that's what we can leave this with.
Correct.
However, I don't believe that's how it is actually operating in our community.
No.
I think all of these kind of things, death, suicide, particularly criminal activity, the vast majority of practitioners lean on the side of disclosure. But I don't think it's simple as that. I cannot disclose that without your consent. If you're my seller, I have to say to you, okay, you tell me about this. There was a murder in the backyard. Chris, do you want to disclose that? And you say, do I have to? I say, well,
My first question would probably be, if I were the seller, is it going to affect the value of my
yes,
property?
yes, it's,
And is it going to take longer for my property to
and
sell?
in my professional opinion, the answer is yes.
Then I would say, no, I don't want it disclosed.
Which leaves the practitioner, listing agent, in a very dicey position.
In some cases, and I know you, as a former practitioner, if I could use that term,
Good word.
like you were
Yeah, doctor,
physician or something,
surgeon.
actually have given up business, allowed listings to leave your portfolio because of conflicts of this nature.
Correct. For fear that I'm going to have a colleague of mine, not just at the company that I might be working at, but any colleague in the industry, coming to me afterwards when their buyer purchases a house, moves in, and finds out about an event, and says to me on a collegial basis, I really wish you would have disclosed that to me. My buyers would not have bought the property. I'll try to throw the onus back on the other agent.
Yeah. Did you ask?
You didn't ask me. I have a duty to be honest with you.
For sure.
If you would have asked me,
In fact, even in the United States, where it's a buyer beware state,
must be honest. if you're
every
asked.
state says if you're asked,
Yes.
you have to disclose.
No question, you have to be honest. You cannot obscure the truth. Yeah. The question is whether you have to actively disclose. And you might just decide to say, this is not the kind of matter I really want to be involved in, so I recommend you go to another agency.
So how do we leave this?
Well, I didn't expect that we were going to have an answer, but it's
So it's a case by case.
and it's a top of mind matter as well. It is definitely a case by and a judgment call, because there is no law, no regulation you could turn to for the answer. But I think the fallback position in our industry, for sure, when in doubt, disclose. Except I don't believe it's that easy, because I think there's a risk of impairing value.
Well, before we leave this, I did a little research, and there's a case in L.A. It's not going to provide an answer to anything that we're talking about. L.A., of course, is in California. There's no disclosure requirements other than what we mentioned.
3 years for death.
In this case, a serial murderer lived in this house. Serial murderer, as far as we know, did not commit any of the crimes
In the house.
in the house.
Yeah. But it's well known he lived there.
He lived there. He was convicted, and he died in jail in 2020. Someone bought the house. That someone sold the house to the person who has started the litigation.
Okay.
The person subsequently discovered, as the buyer, that this was the serial killer's home.
Had no prior knowledge.
No prior knowledge.
How did he find out?
Neighbor.
Gotta love neighbors.
Gotta love a neighbor. Is now suing for misrepresentation, fraud, duty of care, all these sorts of things.
It was a litany of
I could read them out.
I read them out. They're pretty good.
I could read them out.
It was actually very well formulated, crafted.
A whole bunch of them.
The state of the
They're really too many to read out.
But it was great.
But it was great.
It was great.
We'll see how that case unfolds, because then, if she's successful,
That changes everything.
it changes everything, because then there will be a basis separate and apart from all the stuff that you and I have been talking about in determining what is a material fact or duty of care in terms of disclosure.
You're right.
So that will be.
But that's going to take years. And in the meantime, we still have to muddle through these things.
Well, we have.
And I think, you're right. We have this. But I think you're also right. It's on a case by case basis.
Yeah, case by case.
But it's very challenging.
Very challenging.
From a managerial perspective to
And
deal
the other part, I think we may have used this word already, it involves emotions. Emotions that are different than just the bricks and mortar component of a real estate transaction.
Yeah, it is a really interesting topic. It's again, it's like that brain canton act. It just needs a lot of time. Although this is a 2016, so less than 10 years old. That brain canton act that we had was a 2005, so 20 years old, and it's coursing on the exact same
This is as
trajectory.
good as it gets.
Well, it's pretty good.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, not all of us are the aficionados.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
are.
Yeah, I've
but-
read.
I've read. Okay. And on that point, what we're hoping is to do another offsite podcast,
Yeah, way game.
potentially in Prince Edward County,
Which I
one of the
think would be great.
one of the vineyards.
I thought you said 2. Didn't you say 2 vineyards?
Well, we can't do 2 vineyards at the same time.
Yeah, but we could do 2 separate podcasts.
2
while we're
separate
out there.
podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You got this lined
day
up yet?
2, huh?
Do you have this sorted out yet or no?
It's more or less sorted out. Just dates,
Okay.
dates, and it's a busy time of the year.
Yeah, I can't do it now.
In the
County's crazy.
in the county.
Yeah.
But
they're-
we'll taste some decent Chardonnays.
But they're on board.
and some Pinots. Yes, they're on board.
Fantastic.
Decent Chardonnays and decent Pinots.
Good. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you all for
Yeah,
attending
been
our
amazing.
podcast again. I hope you found the topic interesting. And
I did.
I did. Sadly, there's no resolution, but I think it was worth
Yeah.
it.
So we've got a couple of interesting topics and I haven't even told you about them for the
Oh, I see.
podcast.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
À bientôt.
Thank you.